Otto von Bismarck, nicknamed the Iron Chancellor, was a Prussian statesman who engineered a series of wars to unite the German Empire. His rule marked a time of peace and prosperity in the newly unified German nation. His domestic and diplomatic policies and aggressive use of political manipulation make him arguably one of the most influential world leaders of the 19th century. To begin our journey of study on the life and times of Otto von Bismarck, we will travel to Berlin in the present-day country of Germany. Otto von Bismarck was born a few miles west of Berlin in the state of Saxony-Anhalt, which was then part of the Kingdom of Prussia. In 1815, at the time of his birth, what we know today as Germany was comprised of 39 separate states, each with its own ruler and own government. For instance, Bavaria, Saxony, and Prussia were ruled by kings and princes that did not want to unite or give up their power or their independence. Most countries had no constitution to ensure citizens' rights. Furthermore, these states were loosely bound with Austria in a region that was known as the German Confederation. The German Confederation was dominated by Austria under the leadership of Prince Clemens von Metternich. Clemens von Metternich was the architect of the Congress of Vienna, which restored the balance of power and legitimacy to countries after Napoleon's joyride through Europe. Metternich conservatively attempted to restore the power of the monarchies prior to where they were before the outbreak of the French Revolution by crushing nationalism. To accomplish this goal, Metternich passed the Carlsbad Decrees that cracked down on the Burschenschaften movement, or nationalist fraternities, purging German universities of liberal professors and placing tight restrictions and censorship on the press. Additionally, France intentionally supported rivalries between the German states to prevent unification and a loss of power. Otto von Bismarck was born in 1815 at Schloss Schönhausen into a wealthy Junker household to Karl Wilhelm Ferdinand von Bismarck and Wilhelmine Louise Mencken. Bismarck was highly educated in some of Prussia's most prestigious institutions, where he studied law and agriculture. With ambitions of one day working as a diplomat, Bismarck became fluent in English, French, Italian, Polish, and Russian, in addition to his native German tongue. Bismarck observed Pietist Lutheranism, the majority religion of Prussia at the time. In 1847, he married Johanna von Puttkamer, and together they had 3 children. Prussia emerged as one of the most influential and powerful of the German states, as it had a mostly German population, while Austria, its counterpart in the German Confederation, was often torn apart by ethnic groups with differing interests. Prussia also had one of the most powerful militaries in Europe due to its massive industrial revolution. Between 1815 and 1850, the population of Prussia rapidly skyrocketed from 11 million to 18 million residents. The Zollverein, a free trading union that was developed to facilitate commerce, greatly promoted German economic growth and showcased the benefits of German unity among the states. In 1848, revolution swept through Europe's major cities. Europe's conservative governments could not effectively respond to the problems and tensions created by industrialization and urbanization. Growing unemployment, crop failures, and the rising price of food fueled demands for change. Finally, the working class and middle class liberals felt the Metternich system was outdated. In order to quell some of these problems, nationalists in Germany called for unification. As a result of these expressed grievances, riots broke out in Prussia's capital, Berlin, and King Friedrich Wilhelm IV was forced to assemble a convention for the drafting of what would become a very liberal constitution. Upon the death of Friedrich Wilhelm in 1861, Wilhelm I ascended to the throne and devised a plan to expand the Prussian military. Prussia's liberal parliament challenged Wilhelm's reforms by refusing to fund his proposals. In an effort to undermine the liberal parliament, Wilhelm turned to the politically conservative Junkers, packing his advisory board with members from this elite class. In 1862, Wilhelm I selected a Junker with staunchly conservative political views to serve as his prime minister and secretary for foreign affairs, our main man, Otto von Bismarck. Otto von Bismarck shook up the liberal parliamentary system by declaring he would rule without a legal budget or the consent of parliament. In his very first speech to the members of the Prussian parliament, Bismarck firmly declared, "The great questions of the day will not be settled by speeches or by majority decisions. That was the great mistake of 1848 and 1849, but by blood and iron." Bismarck became a master of realpolitik, a German term that means the politics of reality, or tough power politics with no room for idealism. Bismarck believed the German states could only be unified through the use of military force. Thus, he bolstered the Prussian army and ambitiously set his sights on expanding the Prussian realm. In 1864, Bismarck forged an alliance with Austria and declared a war on Denmark to absorb the border provinces of Schleswig and Holstein. The victory ignited Prussian nationalism and helped convince neighboring states to support Prussia as the head of a unified Germany. Soon, an altercation developed between Austria and Prussia over who would control the two newly gained territories. In 1866, Bismarck provoked Austria to declare war on Prussia by stirring up conflicts on the German-Austrian border. The 7 weeks war lasted only 7 short weeks before Prussian military might crushed the humiliated Austrian forces. As the losers of the war, Austria was cut off from its attempts to prevent German unification when it was expelled from the German Confederation. Austria focused its attention on its own domains and issued the 1867 Ausgleich, which created the dual monarchy of Austria-Hungary. With Austria kicked out of the German Confederation, Bismarck employed his heavy use of manipulation to organize a new union that was known as the North German Confederation, that united Prussia and 21 other German states. Bismarck dominated the domestic and foreign affairs of the North German Confederation through his cunning diplomacy, ruthless politics, and provoking agreements through deceit. Bismarck's appearance at meetings in his Prussian military garb, accompanied by his trusty canine at his side, evoked a sense of force and intimidation. The decisions and opinions of his colleagues and rivals could be quickly altered by his domineering personality, violent temper tantrums, threats of resignation, or a quick "Sigum!" The remaining states in southern Germany predominantly practiced Catholicism and were apprehensive to enter a union with Protestant Prussia, as they felt it may threaten their religious freedom. Bismarck deviously engineered a plot to unify northern and southern Germany by orchestrating an outside threat to southern Germany. In 1870, Prussia entered into an altercation with France, which had opposed German unification for centuries because it was seen as a threat to French power. Bismarck manufactured the Ems Dispatch, an edited diplomatic telegram discussing a meeting between Wilhelm I and the French ambassador over the search for a new Spanish monarch. Greatly insulted, France declared war on Prussia on July 19, 1870. The powerful Prussian military careened into northern France, and by September 1870 had captured the main French fort at Sedan. Here, the Prussians took 80,000 prisoners captive, including France's Emperor, Napoleon III. For 4 months, Paris held off a German siege where they ultimately surrendered due to widespread hunger. It is at this time that the French resorted to eating the animals in the Paris Zoo. During the course of the Franco-Prussian War, the Catholic states in the south joined Prussia's war against France in a strong demonstration of German nationalism, which successfully united all of the German states. France was humiliated in its loss of the Franco-Prussian War, and hostilities mounted between the two countries, which would eventually lead to World War. Germany forced France to pay for its losses in the war through a monetary indemnity and by ceding the mineral-rich provinces of Alsace and Lorraine. German unification created a new balance of power on the European continent. With its rapid industrialization, Germany became a force to be reckoned with. After his successful unification of the German Empire in 1871, Bismarck would continue his show of diplomatic genius by making Germany a major power player on the world stage. Not the most ardent supporter of colonialism, Bismarck eventually caved to imperialist demands to compete with the other nations on the European continent. In 1885, Otto von Bismarck took the reins of the European scramble for Africa during the Age of Imperialism. At the Berlin Conference, the European powers successfully partitioned the entire African continent, only leaving behind the two independent countries of Liberia and Ethiopia. In an effort to preserve his power and undermine his socialist and Catholic rivals, Bismarck embarked on making Germany the first European country to develop a state social welfare program that included health insurance, accident insurance, and a system of old age and disability pensions. Passing this legislation allowed him to politically outmaneuver his socialist enemies by gaining the support of the working class. Additionally, Bismarck began his struggle with the Catholic Church in what was known as Kulturkampf, another campaign of manipulation to garner tighter political influence over the Catholics of the German Empire. Bismarck ultimately overturned Kulturkampf when he realized the conservatism of the Catholic Church could be used to stamp out his socialist enemies. In an effort to make himself indispensable, Bismarck devised a complex system of alliances that was so complicated, only he knew the ins and outs of how they actually functioned. This alliance system became dangerously problematic in 1890 when Kaiser Wilhelm II, Wilhelm I's grandson, forced him to resign. The system of entangling alliances that no one but Bismarck could decipher would become a main cause of the First World War. After his falling out with Kaiser Wilhelm II and his resignation from political office, Bismarck continued to take interest in Germany's political and social problems. Here, he covertly attempted to create opponents to all of Wilhelm's legislation and uncooperatively refused to show public support for the Kaiser's regime. A year before his death, Bismarck predicted and warned the Kaiser, "The crash will come 20 years after my departure if things go on like this. And one day the great European war will come out of some damned foolish thing in the Balkans." Bismarck spent the remainder of his life writing his memoirs, titled Thoughts and Memories, where he generously snubbed Kaiser Wilhelm II. Bismarck died at the age of 83 in 1898 after suffering from a bout with gangrene. The time period in world history, beginning with Bismarck's rise to power in 1862 to the time of his resignation in 1890, is often referred to as the Age of Bismarck. Bismarck will forever be remembered as the Machiavellian diplomat and statesman who skillfully manipulated the independent states of the German Confederation into the unified German Empire. Bismarck is appropriately nicknamed the Iron Chancellor due to his pragmatic strategies of gaining and maintaining power. many of which were and still are emulated by world leaders to this very day.